Welcome everyone to the Wednesday edition of our Packers News live chat alongside Jim Owczarski. I am Olivia Reiner. The Packers hit the field for the first time this week on Wednesday to get ready for this Sunday's game against the Philadelphia Eagles. We'll take a look at the recent signing of wide receiver Tavon Austin, plus we'll look ahead to this weekend's matchup between the Packers and the Eagles in just a moment. Before we get into that, as always, you can be a part of our conversation and you know the drill. If you're over on Facebook, Periscope, or YouTube, leave us a question down in the chat. Jim and I want to hear from you. We'll get to some of your thoughts toward the end of our conversation today. The Packers finally have a first-round wide receiver on their roster. The 2013 first-round pick Tavon Austin was signed to the roster just yesterday, and he has a lot of experience that he brings to the Packers. He has played receiver, he has played running back, he has also fielded punt returns as well. He averages about 8 yards per punt return in his career. What kind of immediate boost can Tavon Austin bring to the Packers roster?
Yeah, I think immediately it's on punt return. He hasn't done it full time since 2016, but 7 years ago when he came into the league, he's one of the more dynamic punt returners in football. I mean, he returned one for a touchdown, I think, each of his first 3 seasons. So he knows what he's doing there, and I think when it comes to learning offenses, learning schemes, punt return is something where, look, you either call the return or you don't. It's a field thing. So I feel he can be active and participate there. He admitted, Olivia, on Wednesday that he hasn't really returned kicks much. That was probably his rookie year. So that's 7 years ago that he did that on a regular basis. But again, he's a name. And just the idea of him being back there might prevent teams from doing what they did with Darius Shepard and Tyler Irvin, which is forcing the return. So that's my first thought on immediate impact. He said there's a little bit of a carryover from 17 in LA with Sean McVay, Matt LaFleur, a little bit of carryover from this training camp with Kyle Shanahan in San Francisco. But, I mean, wow, it's hard to say that he's going to leapfrog over a healthy, Alan Lazard, Equinemius St. Brown, even Malik Taylor in the immediate near term offensively.
Packers return specialist Tyler Irvin has missed 4 games this season, including the past 2 games against the Colts and the Bears with a ribs injury. Irvin has had a lackluster second season with the Packers. He's averaging 2 yards less per punt return and 6 yards less per kick return from 2019. How likely is it that Austin gives Irvin a run for his money for that starting first-string returner position?
Yeah, I think, Darius Shepard obviously was the roster casualty for this move with the second-year man being released. But I think Tyler Irvin, I mean, he had been the primary returner, kicks and punts. 5 yards of a punt return, I mean, with a long of 11, not very good. 17.6 yards on his kick returns, Olivia. That's 32nd, last in the league among returners with at least 8. So the spark that he gave this group a year ago, that's gone. I mean, his role on offense has increased. And it's fair to wonder, too, he's been dealing with the wrist, now ribs. If he's having trouble staying healthy or getting healthy, Austin seems to be like he can fit that mold of that sort of stack receiver who motions across on the jets or the flies and really presents that run-pass option that Irvin has provided. He doesn't have the numbers to go with that, but the looks at least people have respected. And now Tavon Austin, again, a much more well-known player with more experience, more film that maybe can fill that role also.
Let's take a look ahead to this weekend's game against the Eagles, specifically at the Eagles offense. Eagles quarterback Carson Wentz has gone from 2018 Super Bowl champion to one of the most struggling quarterbacks in this league. He is the first NFL quarterback in 36 years to have 15 interceptions, 46 sacks in just 11 games. How likely is it that Wentz continues on his unlucky streak against the Packers this weekend?
Yeah, it's one of the more confounding things. I don't think I've seen a quarterback go from, he was going to win MVP the year they went to the Super Bowl if he had stayed healthy, to where he is now, which is, people call him for his job, and he's just not playing very well. Unlike the Packers, Olivia, where, they've had offensive linemen kind of rotate through, the Eagles haven't been able to withstand that. I think Matt LaFleur mentioned 10 different offensive line combinations, and it hasn't gone great for them. So that starts there. And Wentz, just hasn't been good. I mean, Monday Night Football, I'm sure Packers fans dialed in the Seahawks and saw, a team that still has potential to be dangerous offensively, but then throws a bad interception in the end zone on fourth down. I mean, that's kind of the story of their year. I think they can do enough to scare you at times, Olivia, but I think that the Packers, their pass rush, the ability for them to limit explosive plays will probably keep the Eagles in check. I just don't see how they can scheme up around a struggling quarterback right now.
The Packers are going to see a familiar face on this Eagles offense on Sunday. Wide receiver Travis Fulgham, who spent some time with the Packers in training camp, was soon after claimed by the Eagles off of waivers. He was signed to the active 53 back in October for the Eagles. Since then, Fulgham has become the team's leading receiver in yards and in touchdowns. What can Travis Fulgham show the Packers on Sunday that perhaps they didn't see in training camp when he only spent about a week with the team?
Yeah, I think, and the part of training camp he was with the team was the part I don't think they could have been on the field. I think that was just that ramp-up period after the COVID protocol. So, I mean, in reality, Travis, he was a Packer, but they never saw him do anything. They claimed him off waivers from Detroit because clearly they liked maybe what they saw on film, a scouting report. But it is interesting, Olivia. We start this chat talking about Tavon Austin. And here was a guy they had on their roster maybe that could have helped bridge some gaps with Adams and Lazard injuries, Equanimeous St. Brown injury, that type of thing. So I think what they're going to see is a guy like Juwan Winfrey, who's on the practice squad right now, a guy like Alan Lazard, which I think is why they claimed him. He's a big-bodied guy, a physical receiver, will fight you for the ball on a contested catch. So I think if Carson Wentz can throw it up, he'll challenge Kevin King and Jair Alexander, and at least at the point of the reception. So, it's an interesting story, especially as the Packers have looked for kind of that third, fourth guy since camp.
All right, everyone, let's head over to Facebook, Periscope, and YouTube for some of your questions today. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. Let's start with Jared over on Facebook. Jared wants to know, what will the offensive line look like this Sunday? Both center Corey Linsley and right guard Lucas Patrick have been dealing with injuries. Linsley a knee injury and Patrick a toe injury. Patrick was apparently a limited participant in practice today, although he was not outside for the media viewing portion of practice. Linsley did not participate. Instead, when both of those players came out, the offensive line looked a little bit more like this. They had Elton Jenkins at center, they had John Runyon Jr. at left guard, David Bakhtiari stayed at left tackle, and then when I believe it was back when Lucas Patrick came out, they put Rick Wagner at right tackle and then Billy Turner at right guard. So that was the offensive line the Packers were working with after all of the injuries. How confident are the Packers in that starting five, if it has to be a starting five on Sunday, if Turner and Patrick aren't able to go?
Yeah, Corey Linsley's out for at least 3 weeks, so it'll be curious to see if they put him on injured reserve at this point, Olivia, if they're going to give him a little bit of time. That might just depend on the health of everyone else. With that roster move. Lucas Patrick's interesting as well. He, with a toe injury, that's tough. That ended Montrevious Adams' season. He was never quite the same guy when he came back from that camp injury, and finally it ended his year a couple weeks ago. So I think they have to be careful there with Patrick. The Eagles, that said, are very good up front still. They get after the quarterback and running backs. So, it's Elton Jenkins at center. It's John Runyon Jr. at left guard. I think they're going to feel good about that, to be honest. You're right, though, at the end there, Billy Turner at right guard, Rick Wagner at right tackle. That's the interesting one because I think Turner had found a home at right tackle. Our colleague Tom Silverstein believes it turned into his best position. Whereas right guard, there were maybe some pass blocking issues a year ago, and obviously Wagner, he was beat out for a reason. So I think what they would love is if Lucas Patrick can go and Billy Turner can stay at right tackle. But at the very least, it's Runyon Jr., Elton Jenkins, at least until Corey Linsley can get back to playing.
Thank you, Jared, for your question. Let's continue on our injury conversation. Your Jim. James, other Jim. They call you Jim, James. James wants to know, how long will running back / return specialist Tyler Irvin be out? Irvin, like I mentioned earlier in our show, has missed 4 games this season, the last 2 games with a ribs injury. Irvin was back at practice today, albeit in a limited capacity. How long should Packers fans expect to see Irvin out?
Yeah, there's a part of me that thinks the move to sign Austin and release Shepard tracks Irvin to coming back this week. But again, at the top of the show, I said I think Tavon Austin can play right away as a returner. He's got that. He hasn't played this year, but if he fields some kicks out at Lambeau Field and he feels comfortable with it, why not go with it? But maybe Irvin's the man anyway. Maybe they just feel, give Tavon Austin a week, 2 weeks. Remember Ryan Grant a couple years ago, Olivia? He was signed and just kind of was inactive for a few weeks. So I could see that scenario as well. So, James, a long way to say it. I feel like Irvin could be ready to go this week, but I guess I wouldn't be surprised if they give him another week or two now that Austin maybe handled some of those special team duties.
Thank you, James, for your question. Let's go over to our friend Todd on Facebook. Todd, it's good to see you. Todd points out that the Eagles' defense is no slouch. Quarterback Aaron Rodgers said, this is a good defense. It's a top 10 defense. The Bears' defense that the Packers were able to hang 41 points on this past week is also a good defense. How do these two different defenses differ, and what are the Packers going to see on Sunday?
Well, yeah, the Eagles, at least, on Monday night, they showed something the Bears didn't have Sunday, which was effort a little bit. I think the Eagles still have some fight in them. DK Metcalf took care of Darius Slay quite a bit, so I'm sure Slay is looking forward to the former Lions corner, looking up to matching up against Devontae Adams, maybe redeeming himself a little bit. But they get after the quarterback. They rush the passer. There's some interesting blitz schemes, but it's usually man coverage. And honestly, Olivia, the Packers like those odds. Devontae Adams rarely is covered in man situations. So I think what Todd, you're right. They get after the quarterback. I'm expecting they'll still be into it. They're still in the race in their division, unbelievably, to win it. So they're playing for something. But yeah, I do. You're right. They are no slouch, and I do think they're going to try to get after Rodgers.
Everyone in the NFC East is still in the race to win the whole thing. It is not yet over there. Thank you, Todd, for your question. Let's take a question here from our friend Josh over on Facebook. Josh wants to know, running backs Jamal Williams or running back Aaron Jones, which one will come back in 2021? Both Williams and Jones become free agents in 2021. Of the two, Jim, if either of them are possible, which are most likely that the Packers would be interested in having back next season?
Yeah, since that's the question, is which one? I'll go with Jamal Williams. I do have to say, there's a part of me that thinks neither will be back. But Aaron Jones is clearly the top flight guy, the one who is going to command the bigger contract and might have a bigger market. So, the David Bakhtiari extension, the Kenny Clark extension, Brian Gutekunst said, hey, that gives us some flexibility. But, he's talking about making some moves in free agency, in terms of picking up guys who are cut, things of that nature. So it doesn't mean Aaron Jones isn't a priority, but considering the money, considering maybe they feel it can be A.J. Dillon's offense next year, I can go with Jamal Williams over Aaron Jones.
Thanks, Josh, for your question. Let's go over to YouTube. YouTube, we have a commenter, Pack Attack. Good to see you. They want to know, quarterback Aaron Rodgers said today he still has plenty left in the tank. What does that mean for rookie quarterback Jordan Love's future? Rodgers has been saying this since this offseason when the Packers drafted Love in the first round, that he intends to play out his contract at the very least. He still has several years left on his contract. What does Rodgers' current performance imply for the future of Jordan Love at this very moment?
Yeah, I know it's a narrative, and Silo Zosha's back there talking about Jordan Love as well. It is, look, the Packers brought this on themselves by drafting Jordan Love after signing Aaron Rodgers to an extension, after Rodgers saying he wants to play to 40. It's too early to say that it means anything to Jordan Love's future. I think right now, Pack Attack, I would just assume that he'll play here in Green Bay next year. And then that's when the question comes about Jordan Love's future. Is Aaron Rodgers an MVP, a multiple Super Bowl winner? and Jordan Love is expendable, or is it time for Rodgers to be traded or released and move on? So but that's a question I don't think really now is going to be answered until 2022.
We'll go back to Josh over on Facebook. Thank you, Pack Attack, for your question. We appreciate it. Josh wants to continue on our free agency 2021 conversation. It's a fun conversation to have. However, this isn't necessarily about free agency. However, it relates more to the cap situation for next season. Josh wants to know, is outside linebacker Preston Smith coming back next year? The Packers are going to be looking for ways this offseason to get under the minimum, what is believed to be the minimum salary cap of at least $175 million next season. They have a lot of cutting down, rearranging that they'll have to do in order to get underneath that number. Preston Smith in particular is an interesting candidate to either restructure or release because of the fact that he has underproduced this season compared to last season. He came into this past week's game against the Bears with just a sack and a half. He had arguably his best game of the season with a sack and a fumble recovery for a touchdown. What does Preston Smith's future look like here in Green Bay?
Yeah, so I'm actually pulling up his contract details as that question came up. He's got a $16 million cap number next year. And a $4 million roster bonus, so that's guaranteed money. And obviously the signing bonus is spread out. So, look, he'll have 2 years left in Green Bay, 21 and 22. I know fans like to just think, restructure a guy, right? It takes two to tango. If you're a player, you may not necessarily want to be restructured. Usually that takes money out of your pocket. So, I can see, I don't see it. Let's put it that way. I could see them going to him maybe and asking about a restructure. But I think where the cap number, Olivia and Josh, are going to fall off, it's going to be Corey Linsley's $10 million. It's going to be Lane Taylor's $3 million. Mercedes Lewis, $2 million. Aaron Jones and Jamal Williams, that right now that's a little over $4 million apiece. So it's things like that, I think, where that's all going to fall away. And yes, they have to replace them, but remember, rookie draft contracts, those are small. Things of that nature. So not saying a veteran, there might not be a surprise cut because the Packers are looking forward to signing some surprise cuts, so they may have some of their own. But right now, I think I'd stay away from the stars because, again, if they go to an NFC Championship game or they win, it's because of those guys. And I could see that the cap savings may be coming elsewhere.
Thank you, Josh, for yet another question. Let's go over to Facebook. John has a question. John wants to know, who did the Packers have beyond backup tackle Rick Wagner if there are more offensive line injuries? The depth chart has been absolutely depleted over the season, most recently with Linsley and Patrick going down. There's not a lot of players behind the remaining healthy offensive linemen that are considered to be presumably starters this upcoming Sunday, except for perhaps a tackle like Yosh Nijman, who is hard. I don't think he's really played any meaningful reps in a game just yet. What other emergency options do the Packers have? God forbid there are any other injuries this Sunday.
Yeah, John, I actually asked Matt LaFleur this on Monday, and it's funny because remember, Olivia, come draft time when they drafted John Runyon Jr. and Simon Stepaniak late, and all fans were up in arms about, what about all these interior linemen you have? Why would you need these guys? Well, guess what? Simon Stepaniak's practicing right now to maybe come off NFI, and he might play because, yeah, you're right. Lucas Patrick was the backup. So I think now his question is Wagner. The assumption there is that right guard, Billy Turner's at right guard. I think if Billy Turner's the swing tackle now, in my opinion, with Linsley out, like they can't. I don't think they can move. Oh, see, I say that, but maybe they could move Patrick to center, Jenkins the right tackle, Turner to left tackle, whatever that was in Minnesota. So, John, what I'm saying is they have shown already how much flexibility the current group has, how good they've played together, and if Simon Stepaniak has to come up or Zach Jacobson, I don't think Olivia Yosh. I think he's still a project. That's kind of a oh no, all the tackles are hurt. That's where Yosh fits in right now. I think they'd rather work with inserting the interior lineman, and if need be, kicking Elton Jenkins out.
Thank you, John, for your question. We appreciate it. And thank all of you for joining us tonight. That is going to do it for us today, everyone. Make sure you come back later in the week. We will continue to preview the weekend's matchup between the Packers and the Eagles and take more of your questions. For Jim Owczarski, I am Olivia Reiner. We will see you next time.